Sarcasm, maybe.
No,
Uh,
yeah.
my grandma wanted me to ask you a question.
Your grandma.
Do you,
Hi, grandma.
yes, she wanted me to ask you if you have a bunker in your house.
I don't know. No.
Okay, she's talking like she thought she heard that there's like new building codes where all houses have to have a bunker, and
Usually they do. Yeah, they usually do. But in mine, I don't have it. It was built a while ago. Yeah.
I told her she can hop on the stream if she wants. Last Thursday,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I'm just that would be a wild ride and stuff. You definitely wouldn't want to get some conversations started because she'll just go off saying like the same things and like what's true or not true, masculine TE stuff.
All right. Well,
Uh,
say hi to your grandma.
I will. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
All right. Later, man.
Bye.
Um, how many units are in your building?
Eight.
Hmm.
I mean, eight
got-
in this. There's like a few of them that are eight, like right next to each other.
Oh yeah. Are you friends with everybody?
With the neighbors.
Yeah.
No, I had some drama happen here, so I kind of stay away from them.
Well.
Yeah. The guy downstairs is kind of a pervert, and he's like, I had a guest over, and he like went up and started massaging her and stuff like that. So it was like, yeah,
Gross.
yeah, and apparently he gave a kiss on to a 16-year-old or something like that. Like he's not okay. I don't know, just not friends. Just keeping my distance, trying not to knock people out and go to jail. You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I like. I don't want to interrupt what you guys are talking about. If you don't mind, I'll answer your question briefly, and then I kind of.
No, you're not interrupting. This open panel, man. We're on
what
topic.
because what you're talking about was interesting too. Just there because we deal with the same kind of things no matter where we are in the world, right? And I think that's very
right.
interesting. But yeah, I think with the border thing, I have very mixed feelings. I would say, like, I kind of, on the surface, I definitely do like what Trump's doing, although I'm not really a, big fan of Trump. Honestly, I think that, I think that on the surface, I think that America needs to renegotiate their deals for sure.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean that's just kind of my general opinion. And I think that I think that the border thing is like honestly too little, too late. Unfortunately, because I mean honestly, I mean.
So you don't think it's not better late than never?
Yeah, I do, but I mean I don't know. Well, let me ask you this: like, I don't know what your affinity for Europe or America is. And I don't really blame people one way or the other, honestly, if they love us or hate us. Just like I'm sure you feel the same way about Israel, right?
Yeah.
But I would say that like, I think because like I think the idea of America I support, but I think that our actions have been wrong in a lot of ways. Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't mean that we've done all bad. I think we have done a lot of good, but we've also done a lot of bad too, right? So I think it's a mix. But I would say that like what I see happening to Europe, like I'll be honest, I've met a lot of Europeans, and I don't really like a lot of Europeans, right? I don't get along with them very well, to be honest with you. Like maybe it's something about how I grew up as an American, right? Like I think Americans are very unique from Europeans, And I like it's kind of funny in a way because everybody thinks that like the Europeans got to stick together, and in some ways I kind of like that idea, but in another way, like my reality experience is that a lot of Europeans I don't like them very much. I don't like their attitude. I don't like the way they do things, but I don't like seeing this mess that's been created in Europe. I think that's very bad for everyone. Including Europeans, and I don't know what to do about it, but I don't want to see that happen in America, basically. Like, I think that we've let way too many people in way too fast, and it does, at the very least, it's diluting the culture that I want to preserve, and whether it should be preserved is a whole other question, right? I mean, I think that America has a lot of problems, but I don't
Mhm.
think exacerbating those problems is a good idea. And
Well, like
so,
borders,
Do you think it's a good idea to deport criminals, like kick them out of the country all the way? You think that's a good idea? That's not just illegal immigrants, but other kind of criminals.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think that if you're a violent criminal that has done something very serious and we're extremely sure of what you've done, I think that the punishment should be much harsher, and the nicest thing I think we should do is deport them to somewhere else. I mean, that's the nicest
like if
thing.
they're not citizens, you mean?
Well, honestly, even if they are citizens, to be honest with you, at this point,
Well, because
I
if
think,
they are citizens, then they're your responsibility, and if you deport them, you're screwing over another country by giving them a murderer.
well, yeah, but that's what's been done to America. So I'm just saying, tit for tat. If they want to do that to us, so if they want to do that to us, then I think we should just do that in return.
I mean, that's childish, but yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, all is fair in love and war, right? And I think that America is at war, and we're not honest about that. And some people blame Israel, some people blame Russia, some people blame people from within. But I think it's really everybody. I think the whole world has just become very selfish, including the United States. And something's going to have to change. And I just look at it from a negotiation standpoint. If you do this to us, we'll do worse to you. And I think that's fair, personally.
Yeah.
Maybe that's escalation.
So
maybe that's overly escalation of the problem. But I just think that you have to start somewhere, right? And if we're in a negotiation, that has to be a negotiation.
Like in nature, borders, like a cell membrane or stuff like that, they serve a purpose. Like they're not there for no reason. Yeah, borders are there to control what goes in and out. Yeah, and
and again,
preserve what's inside. And
again, it's just funny because I know a lot of people beat up on Israel, and I think there's some good reasons too, and I think there's other reasons to just say that a lot of the people in Israel are just people like everybody else, and I think that okay, but I think ultimately I just look at it like this, the thing I like about Israel. Stop, dude. They have a identity.
What's going on, buddy?
They have an identity. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, that's what the border is. The border is there to preserve what's inside. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just think that, look, America is losing its identity. So that's why nobody's really fighting to protect it. So either we need to find an identity and stick to it, or create a new one, which I'm okay with as well. But this way that we're going about that is not working very well, right? And so I'm not really like a fascist in the sense where I think that everybody should, be executed if they mess up or whatever. But the other side is there's a cancer in America, and if something doesn't change, it's gonna kill the host. And I think that people just don't want to admit that because the corruption is just so deep. But it's also hard to detect, and I think it's coming from the top and from the bottom equally. There's just a lot of people that have become nihilistic.
I mean, also in nature, you get things.
That's what the psychopaths are, the top and the bottom. So we have a callback to this show.
Callback. There you go.
Yep.
Well, so the other thing is you do have these relationships in nature. You got the parasitic relationships, you have the symbiotic relationships, you got all this kind of stuff. And yeah, part of defending what you're talking about is getting rid of the parasitic ones, but don't hurt the symbiotic ones. Symbiotic ones you need. I think everybody just muted themselves.
No. Well, no, and I agree with you, and I think it's a lot more sophisticated than people realize, and I think a lot of the big problem that I see in America is that Americans are looking at things over simplistically, which is a strength of ours, but I think it's been kind of used to our disadvantage, where we're not looking at it from the way other people do, right? I think that's a big problem in America. We think everyone's like us, and that's just not the case, and I think that's become a big weakness.
That's definitely not the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it's making us weak in so many ways because we're just kind of sitting ducks in a lot of ways, and I think it's a shame because I think even the people that want to destroy America are gonna not benefit from the destruction of America. I think it's gonna drag the whole world down, and I think that's gonna be a shame because when people realize that.
Part of it is like the tall poppy thing too, where like no one wants anyone to be better than any other group. You know what I mean? So like America does kind of has had a tall poppy for a while. So that's kind of part of bringing it down.
And look, the world's going to go on one way or the other, so
yeah, that's right.
It is what it is. And, for me at this point, I'm almost thinking like, is it better to just run away, or I'm not going to stay and fight. I might be here, but I'm not going to fight too much. I mean, I'm fighting in some ways, but in general, I think I'm more interested in creating something new. I don't think that I'm not trying to hold on to the past anymore. I think that there's no point, the past is gone and we're never going to get it back. And so we have to think of like, well, what do we want to build in the future? And, and I'm curious, like, what do you think, like, what do you feel about the analog between Israel and America? And I'm asking genuinely because I know that, like, I joke about, things and people misconstrue it like I hate, people of a certain thing. I really don't, but it's just, it's interesting because I think that the relationship between Israel, America, Russia, England, China, all the big players, I think that we all need to really look in the mirror and say, who are we and what do we want to build in the future, regardless of who's quote unquote in charge? Because I think now we're all interdependent upon each other, whether we want to admit that or not, and I think that the way that the G7 has done things in a very, like, I would just say dysgenic fashion, it can't go on, right? So something's got to change. And I don't know what that change is going to be, but something's got to change. So I was just kind of curious, what do you think? What do you hope for in the future from your perspective?
I mean, does someone else want to answer first?
Yeah, I guess I do. So, yeah, making a new thing. I guess you just make a new identity just by doing stuff, because I don't see any other way to do it. You just do stuff, and eventually people will talk
just
about
do
you
stuff.
doing stuff. Yeah,
just do it. Nike slogan. That's the answer.
Yeah. So other people talk about you doing stuff, and then people will copy you, and then we have the culture, identity, and that stuff.
I can say that. That's one of the things. Is like I was saying this earlier in the stream too. Like different countries and different places come up with solutions to problems, like different systems, different things that we should be copying. Like if it's working and efficient, and then so like why are we stuck in our archaic system? So like the whole healthcare thing in the US is an example of that. It's like, why is the US still not, making healthcare public? Why is it still privatized when it's been shown to like just make American people suffer and the rest of the world is okay? Like it's not the best solution, but it's better than what you got, unless you're rich. Like if you're rich, it's better to, pay for your own medical stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I live in a place where it's already subsidized, and
right.
I think that works pretty well, although there's definitely still a lot of corruption.
Right. I mean, it's just one example. The other example I brought up was Metric. Why don't you guys just take Metric? Or like, I really want to see here in Israel, the bureaucracy system from Estonia. I don't care about you guys, but you guys should want it too.
I do Metric. I mean, we're at -3 degrees spammer. -3 degrees Celsius. So I'm doing Metric.
Good for you.
Where do you live that your healthcare is subsidized?
California.
Oh yeah, I'm in Oregon, so same thing.
Yeah, and I think that works pretty well. I think it's pretty fair, to be honest. And California. So I think California is kind of a weird thing because it's done a lot of things wrong. But even with all the corruption and stuff, like it could manage things better. I mean, my biggest problem with California is that it's not the price, it's not the tax, it's not any of that. The biggest problem with California on the ground level, I would say, is just the drugs and the crime. I mean, I'm at the point where I think like drugs and crime should be a capital punishment after a certain point. Like, I think that it's just people cannot feel comfortable to go around and just rob and steal and kill. You know what I mean? Like that's got to be number one, because if people don't feel safe, people are not going to invest in the future, right? People are not going to want to raise their kids here. They're not going to want to make something of what we have, right? And I know the same thing. I think that the political corruption is very bad, where this whole equality and all this, like, I think that it's just so detrimental, where they take whatever minority group and they try to raise them up. And the problem is not that everybody should not have equal representation. We're already supposed to have that in law. The problem is that it comes at the expense of everybody else, so there's no negotiation allowed. And I think that that's a problem. And I think that's kind of the thing with the healthcare, right? Like, in theory, private businesses should be in negotiation with the customers, right? And I think that they've successfully done regulatory capture to prevent that from happening on the customer level, right? And particularly with the insurance companies, because the insurance companies are basically writing the law that the citizens and the medical field have to comply with, right? And now you have also a lot of big pharmaceutical companies that write the law and stuff like that. And I think that that's just a big problem. Like, we need some sort of incentive for people who are knowledgeable to want to protect people with the law, rather than use it as a purely for profit, right? Because profit doesn't equal morality, obviously, right? So
Well,
there's
yeah,
got to be some sort of thing.
well, it depends on what we allow to profit. So we just have to make sure that people don't profit when they are immoral. Yeah, but it's easier said than done. I mean,
Yeah,
doing a database to find document misbehaving companies so we can defund them, but still allow work.
Well, I think that at some point we have to take away corporate immunity, as far as saying, well, the corporation takes responsibility, not the people who run the corporation. And again, you can't do that as things are now, because the situation, unfortunately, is just where you have to. The situation is unfortunately now where CEOs and board members and stuff like this are legally obligated to put profit before people. So they can literally, you can actually be personally liable if you don't put profit before people as a part of the corporate structure. That's got to change, right?
Yeah, for publicly traded companies, yes. So if we have to probably change that for publicly traded companies, for sure. Publicly traded companies don't make a difference. They can decide what they want, but for publicly traded companies.
Two things. Hi, Nico, and I think Annie had a bunch. I don't know what there was to respond there, but it sounded like you wanted to respond to something.
No, I saw Nico pop on, and I just wanted to say your friend that submitted to CRG, you did an interview with him, and the audio was so bad. I cannot inflict any team with that video. I mean, I really tried just to see if I could personally understand, and the audio was really not good.
He is such a quiet talker. He is so quiet. That was our probably 10th take that was probably his 10th take for getting the computer to try and pick up his voice.
Yeah, for the 11th take, try using microphones.
Yeah.
Well, did you write it down? Because you could probably just feed the
AI to
transcript. To
I don't even think the AI could understand, because it wasn't generating. The AI wasn't generating the transcript.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he is incredibly soft-spoken, and it hurts him to speak up.
What do you think about what Nero was saying about healthcare, Annie? How it's subsidized and it's okay, it works.
I mean, it works for me right now. I mean, for me, it's been a dream, but I still see a lot of problems with the system. It's like I
agree.
spent so much of my adulthood without insurance that now I finally have it. I feel so blessed, so much safer, but I still see a lot of problems with the system.
Yeah,
I agree.
Insurance is incentivized to cover their own financial assets, so they'll find any loophole possible to make it so they don't have to cover you.
Exactly. And that means it's a Ponzi scheme.
It makes complete sense from the business standpoint, because if they cover you, they're losing money.
Exactly.
Well, I'll put it this way: like the idea of America from the beginning was always about, at least in theory, about decentralized power of the people to, negotiate with the powers in charge, right? And I think similarly, the way that that was never intended to be everyone equally honest. We all know that. I think that there has to be some sort of sliding scale in this new situation where we have negotiation power as individuals, but not everybody equally has the same amount of power. And I know that sounds like very wrong, but there's, not everybody has, equally moral intentions within a system. And I think that that's being shown again from the top and the bottom, where, and again, like you can see that in Europe too, where people just show up and they get free money to sit around and do drugs, and drink all day. And same thing here in America.
How did you know that's what Europe was? How did you know that?
What do you mean?
That people, that's what Europe is, that they just sit around and get money to do drugs.
Well, I'm talking about the immigrants that go there. But I could say that in America, it's both. It's both the immigrants coming in, and it's a lot of people that, are born here and just, want to do nothing all day because they get welfare, and I don't think that it's wrong to necessarily, do nothing, but definitely if you're doing drugs and abusing people in your spare time, I think that's a problem, right? And we shouldn't subsidize that,
Okay, I'm everything but the last part, and an immigrant. I don't abuse people. I don't think.
Yeah, well, I was saying both immigrants and people born here do that. So I'm not calling out one or the other, but definitely if you have a population that's already doing that and you add to it, that's not good. And also, like, I don't believe that bringing people into a system purely for economic, quote unquote, reasons is good, because basically you're saying that you want to exploit new people because the old people don't want to be exploited. And I think that that's a problem all the way around as well. And eventually they're going to get to the point where they don't really need people either, right? So then what are we going to do when they don't even need people to run the corporate system? Right?
Do something else. We could do something else with our time. Maybe play video games.
Well, that's actually why I came up. I wanted to ask Binyamin and everyone kind of like, what do you think this is going to head when, the AI basically takes most jobs away and robotics takes all the jobs away? Like, how do you feel as a, from an Israeli standpoint and also just as a human standpoint,
Mark, so we talk about this. We're supposed to have leisure time after that. That's the win. But
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that we're insisting on having jobs when we don't have to have jobs. Like, the economic system does not support a jobless economy, but we should have one that supports the reduction of work, of labor at least, not work necessarily. Because like a lot of jobs people would do anyways. Like people are getting paid for stuff they would just do anyways. You know what I mean? Not a lot of them are actual labor.
I mean, I can see let me just paint a little scenario for you and see if it makes sense, because I can kind of see what you're saying. Let me put it this way. Like, if AI allows people to be creative and like, I'll say from my perspective, like the idea that now in my 30s, I can create a company and run it all with AI and basically express myself and make money and do all these creative things. So like I actually want to work and I don't have to have a boss. That is very encouraging in a sense, right? But then I look out in the general masses and I see people that are, basically
So one of the
nihilistic and
things I
black
saw with
pilled,
COVID, one of the things I saw with COVID is there was a period. I don't know how it was over there, but here there was a period of time where only people who were necessary were allowed to leave their house and go to work. If you weren't considered necessary, you stay at home. And the world ran just fine. Everything ran just fine. We didn't actually need that many people. We didn't need that many jobs. And so it's like, okay, so like all these people who are not necessary, they're doing something. Sure, they're doing something, but why is it considered work and labor? Like if we actually divided out all the work that had to be done, we'd probably only do an hour each and we'd be done. And with AI and robotics, we can even reduce that. So,
so I agree.
The economic system we're stuck
agree.
in is forcing us to keep jobs, but maybe that's the problem.
No, I can definitely agree, and I think that you're kind of pointing to something that I want to talk about more, and so I appreciate what you're saying, because in a sense I can kind of see that ultimately this is going to lead us to a bottleneck of pressure from an evolutionary standpoint, which from a perspective could be seen as a good thing or a bad thing, or maybe indifferent because it's inevitable at this point, which is that people that want to get married and have kids and produce things and do good things, they're going to be ultimately rewarded if they play with the way things are technologically. And then people that basically just want to be selfish and go do drugs and never have kids and never produce anything are just going to ultimately phase themselves out, which again,
I love how you group everything together. It's like you could sneak something in there if you wanted to. Yeah, they do drugs and they like Israel. Those guys.
Well, I didn't say anything like I didn't say anything
No.
about Israel.
I'm like the way you group things together. You could just like slide extra stuff in there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, I'm setting up two extremes, right? Like these are the two extremes, right?
Yeah.
And then you could put anything in the middle. But my point is that there seems to be not very much in the middle, and that's kind of my point overall. Is like you're going to have to choose one. You're either going to cooperate with things, or you're not going to cooperate with things. And I'm not saying it's all bad. It's not all bad. There's a lot of good that can come out of it and is coming out
So
of it.
what I'm saying is, what is the purpose of work? Like, what is why are we working? Why do we even have this thing called work in the world? Like, why don't we start from there? Here, Nico, why don't you give it a shot? Answer that question. Why is there work?
What do you want from me? No,
Why? Tell me, why do we need work in the world?
Okay, so why do we need work in the world? Well,
you jobless leech.
Yeah, of course, because I'm the best person to be answering this.
No, tell us.
So, okay, I believe that some degree of work is necessary in order to keep things. I guess you could say growing and progressing. Progress. I know progress isn't an innate thing, but
also, again, what is progress? How do you define progress?
I would say progress is akin to evolution, to where the more a certain system progresses, the more and more it is robust and is capable of dealing with external pressures and internal pressures that could destroy it. Because at the end of the day, things just don't want to die, and work and stuff and all of that is doing the tasks that are necessary and delegating the tasks that are necessary to keep a certain system alive and functioning.
Yep.
So
okay, you kind of got it. You kind of got it. Yeah. So I would simplify the definition, just make it super simple. Work is there to sustain life, and progress is there to eliminate work. And so that's really what the whole thing is all about. So if we actually had that as our progress, eliminating work, that means we would be able to survive without work, because that's all the work is for, to help us sustain ourselves.
Well, more than likely new work, because there's not an
Well,
ultimate. There's not an.
if you're able to, no,
ideally eliminate all work. You could just be like an observer.
or
You
reduce
could do
the
nothing.
amount of work needed to sustain ourselves. That's
Yeah,
progress. Because like today, you could see that people are working a lot less, and we're running into a situation where we're going to get a lot of people that don't have jobs because we can sustain ourselves without work, and like that to me is progress. The fact that we're at a point in history where we don't need everyone to work anymore, right?
Yeah,
That means people can pursue creative endeavors.
Yep, that's right, or whatever.
That can actually begin to unlock more jobs, because now there's a new field to be discovered. There's a new field to be worked on. That
I would say that's all progress. All progress is a leap in reducing the amount of work we have to do or sustaining us better, right?
Like there's a semblance of progress whenever we moved to the agricultural revolution. Now we have food stores that's
sustaining ourselves better.
Yeah, we allow people to explore other things and do other things that they wouldn't have normally done. And now you have pottery and all of this other stuff that is
right.
That becomes what do you might call it?
And philosophy.
Yeah, pottery, philosophy, arts.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's integral to a culture and maintaining an identity as a as the organism that is your culture,
right.
and your society.
So then you get into work that is not there for sustaining us. So I would say it's not work. I would say it's like you said, it's culture. It's something beyond work. It's identity.
Well, so there's so much packed in this conversation, and I really appreciate it because, this is kind of a culmination of a lot of conversations I've had recently, and I want to take it in 15 different directions, but I want to. I think that you guys are doing a good job of what you're saying there. So like progress is basically eliminating work, and definitely I see that the system is inhibiting that process of what you're saying.
There you go. Exactly.
And I agree, and I definitely agree from that standpoint, and I think that it is a very real, very dangerous problem.
Yeah. Oh, this is concerning.
But I would say that so you have progress, and then you have, what was the other term that you used?
Well, what is work? Like, okay, so like
work,
say progress is eliminating work. So what is work? What are we trying to eliminate?
I mean, again, work is the tasks, the repetitive tasks that are needed to be done in order to sustain an organism.
Right.
Whether
Sustaining.
that's,
yeah. Right. So yeah, so then you get into work. So okay, so you have work for sustaining and then work for progress. Work for progress is eliminating work, right? And that is also a type of work. So the more work for progress we can have, the more work we're eliminating.
Yeah, it's just the thing is that a lot of people they like to be given a sense of direction. They have trouble finding and carving their own direction in the world, which is why our system gives a lot of people jobs that would inherently be a form of meaningless. At least that's how it was. But now what happens is that the system has commoditized those jobs, made them rampant, and made them so mundane that people are beginning to react negatively towards it.
That's also where you get scammers coming in, because scammers don't have anything to actually contribute, so they're just going to scam each other.
Well, yeah, that's what the whole cryptocurrency thing has really been about, unfortunately, and I think that it's a preview of kind of the future of this if we don't get ahead of it. And so just really briefly, I just want to stick with the medical theme just to
here, if you can. So I would say that let's take doctors, right? Ideally, a doctor's job would be to keep you healthy and hold you accountable to keep it healthy. And then let's say that by some accident you get hurt during, farm work if we're in a less technological age, or even now, but you know what I'm saying. Or if you're, you know, just driving down the highway and someone smashes into you for whatever reason, right? And you got to be put back together again, right? Um, you know, that would be ideal, but now doctors are basically there to wait till you're really hurt and really bad off, and then give you a pseudo solution that is profitable. That's a
Right.
problem, right?
Oh, yeah,
So,
Right. So again, go back to the definition, go back to the context. The doctors are there to sustain life and to sustain society. And progress is there to eliminate work, eliminate the need for doctors.
But
So-
what has happened?
One second.
Yeah.
So eliminating the need for doctors can come from a bunch of different places. One of them could be just, okay, robot, AI doctors, whatever. Or it could be, okay, no, people aren't getting sick as much anymore. People aren't crashing in their cars anymore, right? And then both ways, like you're reducing the amount of work needed, the amount of doctors needed, the amount of sustaining. Yeah.
right, I agree. And the only thing I can say, and I want Jobless Leaks to jump in. The only thing I would say is that the problem that a lot of us have started to notice is that if you're looking at it from a standpoint of efficiency, where does efficiency become dehumanizing to the point where then it's like, well, does the problem that we're trying to solve take away the meaning of what it means to be human? And I think that's what Jobless Week was kind of referring to, of like, what meaning does life have if you take away all suffering? And maybe does that make people feel less human, I guess, or something else? I can't really put into words what I'm trying to refer to, but hopefully that kind of puts a little
Yeah.
seed of
And,
that.
the thing, well, yeah, and the thing is that this kind of thing has happened so fast that humans are really, really struggling to adapt to it. And it's not a million year. It's like climate change as well. It's not a 10,000 year process anymore. It's like that. It's really quick.
You're
Which-
grouping other things into it now.
Which is similar to
I agree with everything else. What does this climate change have to do with it?
i.e. it's happening so fast that a lot
Is
of
it?
organisms
Right.
and ecosystems are having trouble reacting. This is true. This is just a true statement. Now going back, what I could say is an issue is that people create these systems, these businesses, these whole bureaucracies in order to make life easier, right? In order to make money, because money is akin to survival. You need money to survive. It's the currency of life in our day and age.
Right now, in our
So
current
you
economic
build-
climate.
So you build these systems that are, going to be effective at earning this life currency. And what happens is that the system becomes so complex and complicated that it has its own emergent phenomena and identity that is beyond that of the workers and the bureaucrats and the business people who own it. So now the system is using us, or
So
the humans,
you just change.
as
Yeah.
cogs
Let me jump
the
in.
machine.
You changed the definition of work there, right? So you changed the definition of work from sustaining us to making money. And I think that's the thing that sort of got missed in the translation.
Well,
So-
here's the thing. In our current climate, what I'll say is that money is a form of sustaining us.
No.
And
No. So again, if we go back to what is the purpose of work, if you change the purpose of work to making money, that is not actually the purpose of work.
Yeah. We need to find what money is. So money is credit, debt pairs, in a bank.
Right. So ideally, in this context, in the context of work, money is a way to track work. It's a way to track the value of work. Like ideally,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Takes,
Yeah. And I just want to say that, yeah, basically money is a representation of value, essentially. And what value means is going to depend on many factors, including some things you can control and some things you cannot control. Right.
Right. So yeah, so like let's take your bureaucracy example. We can make the bureaucracy so complicated and make more jobs out of the bureaucracy, and it'll cost more money to run and more work to run. And that's only because we're missing the point. We're missing the point of what is progress. Progress is eliminating work, not adding more work. And so when you get like a country that's trying to create jobs, they're actually going against progress.
Well, what happens is that it gives more work for the people, but it eliminates work for the bureaucracy and the system itself. Because I'm calling the bureaucracy and the business a form of life form in itself. So it is eliminating work. You know, it creates more jobs to eliminate its own, you know, its own struggle, you could say. Fucking hell. Where the fuck do I... Oh, no, I know where it is. Never mind. Speaking of work, I'm going to a fucking job fair. So...
You might want to change your name before you go there.
Yeah. To, you know, jobless opportunist. There we go.
Well, I just want to say, like, again, I really appreciate the conversation a lot, because this is a very productive conversation, in my opinion. One of the most productive I've had in a long time. You know, one of the top 10, I would say, I've ever had. So,
good too.
I didn't know.
Yeah, no, because
cook over here. I came
and
in to hang.
Hey, oh, and so let me put it this way, because I want to take it whatever direction you guys want to take, but I just want to squeeze in a couple more things to illustrate what I'm trying to get at. Is what, you know, just to make it very clear. You know, like, I'll give you an example. Like, let's just make it very, you know, visceral for people, right? Like, when I go out into the world where I live at, right, and I notice that the women are not really interested in getting with a man. They're not interested in having a family until maybe in their 30s, if lucky, right? In general, women are not really wanting to do that. The men are kind of like checking out of society, right? Now, whether you want to blame that on technological progress or whatever, you know, I'm not saying that it's all bad. I can understand where people are coming from. If we get to a state of being in which life is so pleasurable that we don't really feel the need to reproduce, I don't think that's necessarily all bad in and of itself. But definitely the way that things are, we're in this kind of like moment of bottleneck, right? I don't see that as a positive, but maybe on the other side of this, things are going to be just fine anyways. But I just think that, you know, the fact that I see that so many young people are just uninterested in sex, they're uninterested in having a family, they're uninterested in reproducing and having children and watch families grow and build society in that fashion. I find that extremely disturbing, right? And so I guess, what are your guys' thoughts on, like, not only that, but with that in mind, the thing that we're talking about, right?
Oh yeah. So I'm interested, but I don't meet their standards. So it's really, unless you can allow me to use force, there's really nothing I can do.
Yeah. Well, I think what Neurojack is saying as well, Hank, for you is if women were more interested, you would meet their standards, or you would meet some of their standards.
That's a nit that we don't have. That's incorporeal at the moment. So it's really it falls in their court.
Right. I'll tell you the way I see it in life. I see that there's phases. I'm just sort of processing this as I go right now, right? I mean, I see when you're younger, you you stick to your parents. You start off in a family, right? You have brothers, sisters, all that kind of stuff. Then you start to move into friends groups, and there you have a high, like you're doing that when you sort of learn to socialize, and then you reach puberty, and you're getting exposed to more people in order to meet them and start your own family. And the place we're getting stuck is in that stage where people don't want to move from that stage to the next stage. And why that is it more comfortable? Is it more fun? Is it more? Yeah, I don't know. But like, definitely also, like, when you see people actually make families, they stop socializing as much. They have less friends. They don't, they spend
Yeah,
time with family.
I totally agree with that, and I think that's also equally a big problem because, unfortunately, for whatever reason, um, the socialization process, like you said, has become very atomized, and this is a worldwide problem. It's not a problem only in the West. Everywhere in the world, this has become a problem where, um, people are living in nuclear families alone at best. There's not, like you said, there's not a village aspect, and I'm sure I think you're a father, but I am, and I can tell you, like, it's a very isolating experience. It really truly does take a village to raise one kid, in my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that those villages are exponentially disappearing over time,
Right,
for
because you
whatever
have less
reason.
kids. You have less kids. You need less villages. Yeah.
Right, and then you put yourself in a thing is like, should we categorize ourselves of reproducers versus non-reproducers, and do that? And I don't think that that's a healthy way to look at it, but I think
No,
this
not
very
at all.
quickly,
Well, especially
we're
with
gonna
your
end up that way.
definition. Yeah, your definition of it takes a village to raise a kid. So it doesn't matter if they're a reproducer or not a reproducer. The fact that you're part of the village means you're contributing to the future. You know what I'm saying?
Well, in theory, but again, this is why I think where the rubber meets the road between technology and real progress versus pseudo progress. And I think that this is where a lot of animosity has grown against, quote unquote, the system, or whoever runs the banks, or this. Like, I'll tell you, my angle is, like, whoever's running society, I don't blame them, because I think they actually don't have a lot of control, although a lot of people want to pretend that they do. But my argument is that whoever's in control needs to. I mean, whoever's, kind of sculpting things at the higher level needs to start taking these things into account, because ultimately, I just see that, like, nihilism is a real problem, right? I think Nietzsche was really correct on that. Like,
Yeah.
if people basically live their life as if God is dead, that's a very big problem, right? And I think that
There's a lot going on there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So part of what's going on is whoever's in charge of the world is no longer alive, right? Whoever set up these ideas and these systems is long gone, and they're not living to see what happened to their systems. Like, maybe the systems are playing out the way they wanted them to, but probably not. And like, if you no longer have someone able to change the system, or like curve the system that they built, the system takes on a life of its own. And yeah, there's no one really directing the race anymore. So
right, and I think that there could be a way that people with a certain mindset, like us on this panel, we can somehow start to direct things in a better direction. But I don't know how that is. I don't know what the right I don't know what the right process is. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Is like, there's got to be some way that we can have a more symbiotic relationship with, quote unquote, the system or whatever, right? I think going for a symbiotic, at the very least, a symbiotic thing, if not, because at what point does the system take on a parasitical relationship with us, even though it was built to serve us? In theory.
yeah, well, whoever was in charge of the system made the system not only to serve us, but also to exploit us in a lot of cases, and exploit us for their benefit. And they're gone. So who are they exploiting us for now? You know what I mean? Now it's just for the system. It's for, whatever's going on. I mean, it's kind of a doomsday look at it, but I can't see it a different way.
Well, They were made to serve us. But like I said before, and like you mentioned yourself, it takes on a life of its own. So
Yeah.
whenever a system that big takes a life of its own, and you could ascribe a form, like say you could ascribe a form of consciousness and autonomy to the system, right? The way that it will treat us is like how our body treats red blood cells and the cells of the body.
Well,
Because that just because working like that, and doing those tasks, that we would do for the system is going to be the most beneficial for its survival.
if I were to go back to where the system started, I would say it was feudalism. And feudalism was a true symbiotic relationship, because feudalism, you had the lord of the land, and you had everyone, and he owned the land, and he was making sure that everyone on his land got fed, right? That was everyone on his land was his responsibility. And then whatever work he needed from them, they would provide that for him. So like it was a unit, this feudalistic unit. And like that feudalistic system still exists. Like a company is a feudalistic system. Like a company is responsible for all its employees, and the employees are responsible to give their work to the feudal master, right? So
And then the consumers
right.
are going to be the farms and the fields and everything that the workers go to
Sure.
reap
Sure.
from.
Sure. But then when did we go from this symbiotic relationship where the feudalistic system was serving the people and the people were serving the system, because you can't have one without the other, you're supporting each other, to a point where one is getting exploited by the other, and it's getting carried away. The person who started is gone.
So I would like to poise a relationship between our mind, i.e., the way we see ourselves, and our body. I.e., our emergent phenomena that is our consciousness, and the body that supports it. So what happens is that us as a system becomes so complex that we're not working, or we're not functioning to serve and give back to a single cell. We're giving back to the collective cells. Like, I'm not trying to build a muscle cell. I am trying to build my muscles. So what happens is that the individual cells, which would be us at this point, are just lost in the riffraff, and they only have purpose. They only seem to have purpose as a collective.
So I don't know if this is what you're saying, right? I'm going to attack it from a different angle, and maybe I'm saying the same thing you are, but I think really what's going on is the incentives are different. So like when the incentives are the same, like when we realize that the feudalistic system, like the feudalistic property owner and the people living off of the property, right? Those two separate groups have the same interest. Then they start cooperating and they function together. They're truly symbiotic. When the incentives and the interests are different, then that's kind of when you start getting exploitation.
Well, just really quick, if you don't mind, let me just interject briefly. Let me just use a couple of examples to illustrate kind of what I think we're talking about, and please correct me if you think I'm incorrect with the analogy. I think that the idea that I notice that is coming about is that we're kind of entering a techno-feudalism where, the Elon Musk of the world, or, whoever you want to add in there, Elon Musk has 13 children, right? And, honestly, I think that's, regardless of whatever his
and he's going to give
problem,
him a 14th soon. So just
right.
saying.
Right. Well, and again, honestly, I think that's a very blessed thing, and I'm very happy for him. I don't like him very much, but I do think that is a very, I think he's very blessed, right? And I think that's a very, good thing for him. And I think that
is 13 counting, by the way, I'm off topic, but is 13 counting the one he disowned?
Well, I think so. I
Okay,
think
all
just
right,
in general, I think it's 13 as of a couple of days ago when that
right.
girl announced whatever. But and again, what problems aside, I think that the way he's gone about it is probably not the most moral way to go about it. But I respect it from just a human level. I can understand why he would do that, and so, but on the other end, I would say that like so we're going into techno-feudalism now. I mean, that's the postulation that some people are making, and I think that as a rough way of putting it, we're kind of there. But the question I think that's going to be asked of these people is, you know, out of their benevolence, are they going to use this to just reproduce their own children? And if they don't really need people around to do this, then what's to stop them from just using the system to allow people to kind of disappear? And again, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, ultimately, what's to stop the system from just saying, well, I don't really need you around either? And I think that's a very real question that they're probably asking themselves as
Oh,
well.
I
they
think
of course they ask themselves this question because a lot of big rich families lose all the money after a few generations because it goes based on credibility, and if you're not doing something new, well, the money's not going to stay near you. So of
I
course they
think
ask the
those
question.
tendencies, yeah, those tendencies that Neurojack is talking about are real only if there's no such thing as an iteration. And what I mean by an iteration is that process of self-reflection and readjusting. And so, yeah, if we never self-reflect and readjust, then yeah, things can get carried away. But like, I'm not worried about that because there's going to be several iterations before that actually happens, and we'll probably readjust. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope for the same thing, and I think that to some degree we're kind of seeing, iterations of that now, and I think that that's kind of what I'm saying is I think right now we're going through that process. I think it's a
Mhm.
little further along than maybe most people, including you guys, but you know, maybe that's an alarmist, maybe that's overly vigilant, but I think that I'll err on that side with the way things are. But again, it's not like I'm not trying to like make everybody all paranoid or something. But I think that it's good that we start contemplating these things now, just because I
Yeah.
you know I like science fiction. It's like I read William Gibson novels. Like the first one is a Neuromancer. I really like that novel because it's kind of talking about how AI is developing its own personalities, and we're trying to force it into one entity. Maybe it doesn't want to be that. And on the same end, the elites kind of isolate themselves and stop, and try to merge with this thing, and it doesn't really work out that well. And maybe that's just science fiction, but I think that it is a very real question. And I think that if you see people like Elon Musk and these guys, I think they are really asking these questions. And I think that you know I don't know what the answer is, but I definitely think that.
I mean, I've seen Elon Musk talk about population problems and wanting other people to have kids, right? I don't think he wants to be the only father of the world, right? He
Oh no,
wants,
I agree. I,
yeah.
I agree for sure. Yeah,
No,
I agree.
Jack, maybe it's getting a high scores in video games because this seems to be very important to him.
Blessings.
So that's probably it. You probably need to get high scores in video games. So we need to make more video games to get more high scores.
Well, I do think that that reality is going to start looking more and more like a video game. I mean, that's the only way that we can really think to interface with such things. And I think that whether that's a good or bad thing is going to be up to us to decide. But I think that we are going to have to start figuring out ways to more accurately interact with this thing. And you know, I think video game
I
esque
live.
interfaces are going to do like that. So they're going to be like that.
So I have Pico 8 and Voxotron, so I can make video games pretty quickly. So
Okay, well, let's talk about that for
allegedly,
sure. Yeah, let's
yeah.
definitely talk about that. But
hmm
So I think also to answer your child question is like you can also sort of look at the back of evolution where people who aren't having children, their way of life will die because there's nothing to carry on that way of life. Whereas the people who are having children and who maybe have those values innate in them, I wouldn't say all of them, but some of them, like the accidents happen, right? Like that's going to tend to more survive. So, I mean, in the end, people who choose not to have children self defeat their way of life.
Right. Well, I think that a lot. I mean, I'll just put it this way: like a lot of guys that I know definitely feel that like it's a very hostile environment to have children in, and I can definitely see that that is definitely the case. But at the same time, you know, in order to have children, I think that people are going to have to do things that seemingly are very immoral as of right now. And so I guess that's the question: is like, do we just let our survival instincts take
So
over and we start taking over, start going in a direction that's not conducive with our faith, or do we
yeah,
to
so
adapt,
yeah,
or what?
here's a trick. So if you're an American, you just keep the mom single and have her be on welfare. We can get checks from the government, and then you live separately so you can make sure you get all the money um that you can get. So there's a trick hack that I know goes on the hood. So
I think okay, I'll take that. I think my point was more like Neuro, you're having children, right? And you're doing it willingly out of an ideological reason,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
assuming.
definitely put
Right,
a lot of thought into it before I
right,
took the leap, for
right.
sure. So.
And that means you also get to raise your children. And if technically you've raised your children correctly, you're going to have grandchildren. If you've raised them incorrectly, you're not getting grandchildren. And I think that's kind of what's going to regulate the world. Like anyone who's actually giving education to promote life is going to result in life that's promoting more life. And in the end, anything that's not doing that will just die. Like that's what death is. So like
Yeah,
regardless, your
yeah.
children are inheriting the world, and they are the solution to the problem.
Yeah, and I generally agree with you on that. The
Right.
only thing I would say is like, sorry, I had to talk to my kids. um, but yeah, I would say that generally the only problem I could see is that what if the things that we create for efficiency basically make us less able to have the volition to do the process that what you're talking about. And again, I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I'm just saying like
Yeah.
I think that that's a very real problem. And again, I'm just saying that like
Well, there could be
what
a bifurcation. You could be right. There could be one stream of people who take all of their freedom for just to waste their time or to be complacent or to not continue the future, right? To not contribute. And then you have another stream that are contributing. But what's really obvious is one will die out and the other one will live on.
well. Let me put it this way: Is there any conceivable way that you would say that this system or AI or whatever could ever you could ever see it as on equal footing as humans as far as a life form, and maybe its will to survive will select us for extinction, essentially? And again, emotion aside about it, whether we want to say that that's a good thing or bad thing is an aside. But I'm just saying that. Would you say that that's something that we could or should take into account, or is that just kind of the inevitability of the situation?
I'm personally not worried about it. I can see why people would be. It's like it's a scary unknown, this AI thing and what it's going to become. But no, I'm not too worried about it. At least for now, AI is dependent on us more than we're dependent on it. And yeah,
Would you ever see it as a life form equal of that should have an equal consideration of its
yeah.
rights to survive, or not really?
So I think you have to kind of define what is a life form as well. Like, okay, so I would definitely say AI is cognitive, right? We're cognitive, we're processing information, and it's cognitive, it's processing information. We're creating representations with the information we're processing, right? And so is AI. AI is also creating representations. So like saying that we're both cognitive entities, I completely agree with that. Where you lose me is the life form place. Like, sure, even if it reproduces and even if it does all that, it's doing that because its cognition is pushing that forward. And I think like the purpose of cognition is, okay, this is where I go off on my own tangent, my own philosophy. But I think the purpose of cognition is to provide representations for consciousness. And like cognition is the world that consciousness lives in. Like it doesn't live in this world. We don't actually know what the world outside of our representations is. We only know the world inside of our representations. So our consciousness really only just has access to this cognition. And I think the reason why we can communicate with each other is because we are taking up we have a similar cognitive space. So like just language in itself is a shared cognitive space. And so we can share cognition in that way. And AI as well. AI, it's not using cells to represent, it's not using proteins to represent information. It's using a very different thing to represent information, but it's the same cognitive space. It's the same information. And that's why we can have communication with a thing. So I don't know. It's long story short. What was that?
Yeah, that's something other people thought before. That's the con. Then at the end you went to Wolfram. So yeah,
okay.
Other people think the same way you do, including myself.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. So will AI get consciousness, or will it just stay as a cognitive entity? And that's really the question you should be asking. Is there going to be something that's able to take those representations and then drive its own car? You know what I mean? That's I think is just still far away. It's not here yet, but it might get here.
Yeah, I think that's a very very salient point, I would say. I mean, I definitely have some more to add to it, but I'm trying to think of how to respond to what you're saying. Because, I mean, I think it is a concern one way or the other, whether it's officially accepted as a life form or not. But there definitely are people that are involved in this stuff that are trying to make the argument that it is. I would say that whether it is or not, just like, is an animal, should animals have the same considerations that humans do? I mean, I would say not really. As much as we can, yes, but ultimately no. But I don't know. I think that it's one of those things that I think that we have to kind of start preparing for, just because, again, I think that the only thing that I see that I think you and I disagree on is like, where does the efficiency of getting rid of work become a danger to A, existence, and B, living in accordance with God, right? Like if God wants us to live a certain way, is there any point where you could see that this might impinge upon our ability to live in accordance with what God wants us to do?
Well, it definitely does affect it, because like what's that saying? Idle minds or idle hands or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because that's exactly a question that somebody asked me just yesterday about sloth, about the sin of sloth and stuff like this. So, yeah, it's a very interesting concept for sure. And I'm not. I mean, that phrase in particular, "idle hands of the devil's playground" or whatever. Definitely, that's certainly come up. And again, I generally think that if we can get rid of work for our basic needs and to stay healthy and to stay alive, that's not necessarily evil in and of itself, but I'm just saying at what cost as far as the other commandments that we're supposed to do, right? And I think, I don't know the right balance, and that's kind of what I'm trying to allude to.
No, I think you're definitely hitting the nail on the head. There is a risk at creating more free time, but there's also like the potential for more reward. So I'll put it in the way that you're talking about it, right? So serving God. So again, I don't see a difference between, like, I think you can serve God in work or whatever, but like, let's just say we're like separating the two. So you don't need to work anymore. So now you have more free time, and more free time means you can either use that time to serve God more, or you can not. And that's still, the choice is up to the people. Yeah.
I guess on the ground level, would you say that there should be consequences for those that choose to, I don't want to make it too controversial. I don't know where people want to go with it. because obviously we have prisons, we have the death penalty, we have all these different
Right.
consequences for people who
Right.
go overboard. But also, I think that slavery and or indentured servitude and or quote unquote unnecessary work does have the you know it's like I would say it's like a pressure release valve that there's a lot of people that have stupid jobs, and I know a lot of them, and they make way more money than me. But I would be very scared if they didn't have that stupid job. Does that make sense? And I think that that's a very big benefit of the corruption of the system in some sense, because it does create busy work for people that are greedy or slothful or whatever, right? And I think that that is something we can't just not take into account. Does that make sense?
So the entire idea of like leisure time is new. Like that's only something rich people had in the past, right? And today everyone has leisure time. Everyone has watched a TV show. Everyone has, I don't know if they've played a video game, but you know what I mean? Like they've filled their time with something else. And so like when we're bored, we're going to fill our time with something. And yeah, the question is what? The question is what? So yeah, some of those people that you're like, oh, I don't want them to ever, have enough leisure time. That's where their free choice comes in. Like I'm sure that if you had more leisure time, you would use it for a different purpose than they would.
I think that like the pandemic was a good example, and I think it's just there's different kinds of people in the world. So you saw in the pandemic, people didn't have to go to work, and they were always buying bread. They bought their bread from the market when they had to work. Suddenly they don't have to go to work, and they say, oh, I want to do it the hard way. I want my own sourdough starter. I want to do something. I want to make something. And that's kind of, how I am. I couldn't work during the pandemic because I'm a massage therapist, so I wasn't allowed. And I got really creative, and I created more work for myself. And I focused more on my Etsy store because I like to work. I like to do something. Mm-hmm. And other people don't. But then sort of when I think about the thought experiment of like a, basic income, and, one of the arguments is, but some people, they'll just sit around and they'll do nothing, and they're going to be lazy. And I just think like, yeah, that sounds boring. That sucks for them. But I still feel like they deserve to have their basic needs met. Like food.
Right. And I kind of can agree with that. And again, like I actually don't, I'm actually not so, I actually kind of agree more with Binyamin ultimately in a way where like, I don't actually see that, I don't see work to survive as, as inherently good. Like, I don't think that the Protestant work ethic is necessarily like a good thing. Like you just kill yourself working to meet your basic needs. I think that is good for people that are immoral. Absolutely. Like if you're at a very sinful state, and there's nothing else for you, I think that is a perhaps biblical viable solution, right?
Do you define amorality?
Well, definitely if you have tendencies towards homicide or some of the other major aggressions against other people, theft, scamming, and you're just unrepentant and there's no way to really help you, I think that if we're not going to engage in capital punishment, that some sort of servitude must come into play. I don't think that putting people in a cell is humane, for the rest of their life. So I don't know what else to do. I don't know the exact answer.
So like these are, I think by the time we get there, we'll figure out a solution to that problem. Like humanity won't be bored. We'll figure out how to entertain ourselves productively or like in a healthy way. Like, yeah, sure, we might go down some bad paths. We always do. But in the end, we'll figure it out. Like we'll have new ways to entertain ourselves that we didn't even dream of yet,
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like I have mixed feelings on it. Like as much as I do kind of like have this vigilance about a lot of things, I do kind of think that humanity has a lot of potential to do what's right now. And that the technological progress has been a big part of that. Um, and I think what I just see is like the fact that it's getting out of our control, and the fact that a lot of people seem to be losing self control
Yeah. The thing is,
in
you're
the
not
wake of
wrong.
that, right?
You're not wrong. Whenever we get more free time, we get more problems. But then I don't know how we do it. We manage to move out of them. Like, all this identity politics stuff is only coming around now because, like, who had time to think of an identity before? Who had time to have an identity? And now we have time to consider what identity is. You know what I mean? So it's like once we get over that hump and we figure out our identity, then like we're leveling up. We're finding new problems because of our old solutions. We have new problems.
Right. And I guess, the identity politics stuff is very interesting too, because, and again, like I don't want to make it controversial, not because any particular reason. I think it's more like it's more just like I feel like I can actually have a high level conversation with you guys more than the average person. But like definitely, like I noticed that like a lot of the like I don't think identity politics is all bad in theory, but definitely the way that it's playing out is stifling any real negotiation that could be happening between different disparate groups of people. Does that make sense? Like between Europeans and Jews and Africans and Asians and just the fact that like all these different people have their own interracial or intra-racial and also intracultural problems. Like the people that bother me the most are the people that are the most like me. People that speak the same language, they look like me, they come from the same background. I exponentially have a lot more animosity towards these people because I expect them to live by a certain uh, standard, right? Because that's the standard that we all kind of had. And when I see people not sticking to those things, well, I find it problematic. Now you add in other people, and I see that a lot of people that are like me are scapegoating these other people when their own house is not in order. I see that as extremely problematic because I think that nobody wins in that scenario. Our friends or our enemies or anyone in between, right? And I think that that's a very interesting thing that's occurring right now. And I don't know the answer or where to go with that, but I just wanted to say that because I think it's something that we all should be kind of trying to find a solution for. Because yeah, definitely the identity politics stuff is it's not helping anybody. That's for sure. I mean, I think that there's some useful things that come out of it. I can't say it's all bad, but
what it is. Yeah, that's ultimately what it is. Like we are collectively processing identity right now to the point where we have identity politics. And until we've sort of solved that processing, we're going to run into all kinds of problematic things. And yeah, it's just part of the process, in my opinion.
well, let me ask you about something specific as an example, if you don't mind. And again, you feel free not to answer because it is on the controversial side. Like, how do you feel about like? And I'll just use Elon Musk as an example. Like, how do you feel about Elon Musk, just generally speaking, from your perspective?
He's a guy like everyone else, flawed. Uh, yeah, flawed with big dreams and ambitions, and power left unchecked gets corrupt. That's just how things work. So I don't think he's a malicious actor or he's a bad actor. I think his heart's in the right place. I don't think his priorities are in the right place. I don't think like going to Mars when we've got famine is kind of like, like going to Mars would be nice, but why don't we fix our problems here first? So
Right, I could agree. I mean, I think that like the idea of inspiring people to want to go to the moon or go to Mars, I don't see it as inherently bad, but I generally
right.
agree with you.
Right.
I generally agree with you, and I think that if we could just inspire people to take care of what we have, it would make that experience of going to Mars that much better. And I think that there are some plans in the works to make that happen. But I
Yeah.
would say, like, from my perspective, like like from your perspective, here's where I'm saying is like, so Elon Musk is with Trump, and Trump is obviously very friendly to Israel, and I could see some positives and negatives with that. Um,
He must have had an internet thing.
How are you with everything he's talking about? Is touching. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Oh, did I just?
Yep.
No, I think
Okay,
we both.
I'll be really brief and I'll take the answer off just because I got a phone call I got to answer. But
Right.
so really brief. I just want to finish this point because with Elon Musk, like the fact that he's close with Trump, Trump's close with Israel. You know, I want to get into more detail, but it's better just to leave it on the surface for now. I think because I'm actually not confrontational about it. I'm actually genuinely curious. Do you think that Elon Musk, like he's obviously playing this kind of dual role where he's very friendly with Netanyahu. He thinks that Israel is good for America, and I can understand that perspective. I definitely have concerns with a lot of things in the Middle East, as we all should, of course, and and I can see it from both sides genuinely. But I would say that like the fact that he kind of has a lot of like anti-Semitic friends, or seemingly anti-Semitic friends, and he kind of promotes that on Twitter. Do you see what do you feel that is behind that? Do you think that there's something, you know, do you think that he's just kind of like, I could see it from a social engineering standpoint that you want to kind of like let people blow some steam off and feel like they're whatever. And maybe that's what's going on. But do you have any opinion of like why he's kind of playing both sides of that?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with the fact that I don't see anti-Semitism as such a negative thing. I actually see it as a very positive thing, and especially like I'm proud that the worst people on the planet hate us. Just saying, like, I would rather they hate us than they love us. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me.
No, it makes sense to me too, because honestly, as a Christian, you're supposed to love everyone, including your enemy. And I think that that's the ironic part of like this whole thing of like, they've got a lot of people who claim to be, Christian, and they're very angry at everyone else when Christianity is supposed to first and foremost put yourself as, the focus of the problem, right?
That's a different can of worms. I personally don't agree with loving everybody. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Like, love people who love you, love people who are good, but yeah,
right.
don't.
Well, I think that we might agree on the ultimate way that looks. I mean, when I say love, I don't necessarily mean, do what's nice to people. As I said, there's different solutions for people who are immoral, right? So
I don't see love as the ultimate moral answer to everything as well. I see it as one side of a balance coin. So like on that we will disagree. But like going back to your question, I don't cancel people through association, especially since I know that like sometimes you have to work with people you don't want to work with for a higher purpose. So like, yeah, Elon Musk I don't even know who you're talking about, these anti-Semites are, but if he's working with them, like I don't think he's doing it to be malicious. I think he's doing it because of an outcome that he wants to reach. So
right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And just out of curiosity, so like I kind of understand what you mean, but again, I don't really know much about Judaism. I know that Christianity has a relationship with it, and there's different ways to look at it. I don't see that. I definitely don't think that you know Jews are my enemy or Muslims are my enemy or anybody's my enemy because of their faith, right? I think that it's individual people who have individual things that they do, right? And I think everybody has to be looked at as an individual ultimately. But from your standpoint, how would you say what's the balance that you're saying as far as like you know, like let me put it this way: if somebody comes and to my house and wants to destroy my family, I might feel hatred towards them, but I think ultimately, even if I have to defend my family and do things that are not good to defend them, I don't see that as necessarily an act of hate. I think that hate might drive me to do what I have to do in the moment, but um, you know, I don't necessarily know that that means that I hate them forever in all existence. Although certainly, if you know, I don't know what the afterlife looks like in Judaism, but I know that like that person might burn in hell for the evil that they've done, of course.
Well, I mean,
But yeah,
the best example nowadays is like you could look at Hamas and you could say, all right, let's give Hamas more concrete. Let's be like, let them build houses, give them concrete. And then they go and use that concrete to make tunnels and to wage war. So it's like the love and the kindness you're giving to them is going to be used against you if you're not careful. So I don't think love and kindness is always the right solution. Like you're not going to go
yeah,
and
I agree.
help
Yeah, I
your
agree.
enemy buy a gun. Right.
Yeah, I could no, I totally agree with that sentiment. And what I'm saying is like, you know, I don't know much about Hamas and the history of that whole conflict. Uh, I definitely think that they're a bad group from what I do know of
Well,
them, and I
even
wouldn't
if they
work with them.
aren't a bad group, right? They're hostile towards us, right? So even if they're a great group, they're hostile towards us. So it would be immoral for us, like we would be killing ourselves by helping them defeat us.
Right, right. Well, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, I could definitely agree with you on that.
Right.
And right, and so what you're saying is like everybody has to make their decisions based on their in-group preference and and all that. And I guess like, but ultimately, like from what I know of Judaism, I mean, I think you and I have talked about it. Like you guys ultimately do want the world to come under the rule of God and basically like experience Shabbat all the time, right? Like that is the goal. Um, and that ultimately you want everybody to come under that situation. And I kind of can, you know, agree generally with the idea that that would be ideal. I don't know how to get there, but you know. So, but I'm
Yeah.
guessing, but what you're saying is like in the interim, while we're in this, you know, purgatory or whatever you want to call it, like where you just have to make tough decisions between here and there, right?
No, no, I even think I whatever this end utopia is, I even think that is a place where we have to find balance between justice and kindness. Um, you need discipline. You need self-discipline. It's part of life. Um, like giving out free handouts and things like that. Like you were saying, it's not conducive to a positive world. Like we need to find balance. Like if you're going down, like you need this carrot and the stick always.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that point. Honestly, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I appreciate it because, you know, again, like this is the conversation I want to have with people of many faiths, but you know, it's not something that a lot of people are equipped to talk about. So I'm gonna call this person back, but I appreciate it, and I will definitely jump on again and
Yeah, you're
take you through.
welcome back anytime. I don't
Yeah.
know how long you guys want to stay. I should go to bed, but Annie's got power. All right, later, Nero. Did you want to stick around too, Nico, a little bit?
I'm here.
How was your job fair? You don't. That doesn't look like a job fair.
No, it doesn't. The job fair was garbage. There were like 5 booths.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, do you want to be a lifeguard? Do you want to be a bartender? Do you want to be a street vendor? I'm like,
What about a forklifter or a dishwasher?
no,
No.
those jobs are too good for them.
I'm telling you, go move in with Hank. He can get you a job in logistics.
Fuck. Where does that guy live? Okay.
I don't know
I
if
don't
Hank's
know.
still around.
I also forget how old Hank is, if he's my generation or not.
I'm guessing 30s.
Jeez, me and Dave were young.
Mm-hmm. Don't worry, you'll get to a point where there's young people pretending like they know more than you. It'll happen.
What do I do that? Do I do
No,
that?
no, I'm just joking.
I was gonna say, I got put on the spot.
Yeah, no, you did good. You did good. This is part of conversation. It's part of play. Get put on the spot.
It's just like, bro, I'm not. It's just like, what is the purpose of work? I'm just sitting here like. All right, I guess I'll cook.
No.
I suppose.
Yeah, you cook. Yeah. No, it's
Oh, also, I did want to respond, but my AirPod died. To your point.
okay.
To your point, saying, what do you might call it? Your response afterwards being like, I forget. I forgot your response. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm so offended. I'm gonna go cry now.
But I was going to say your response is in a similar vein. Your response is in a similar vein to what I was saying.
Yeah.
Just like,
I
yeah.
figured.
Yeah, but you had to TI it in your own way. It's fine.
Well, yeah, I felt the whole cell analogy was getting a little bit convoluted, so I thought maybe we could try a different angle.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
TI over complication, it's fine.
My favorite thing to say in like the past few years is you're not wrong. Just yeah.
Yeah. You have a lot of really feminine DE ways of moving through people saying stupid shit that doesn't make any sense.
Thank you. I don't know.
No, you're really good at it. I mean, you have these everyone feels validated, and I don't know.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Except for Nico. Nico feels emasculated.
Yeah.
What?
What? Not joking. What is your takeaway, Annie? You were very patient and calm listening to Neuro go on about stuff that I would think would be triggering to you a little bit, but I don't know.
Not really.
No?
I really appreciated his openness and
Oh, good.
looking at all angles. I was kind of hung up on when he was talking about people not having children, young people. I don't know if I remember correctly, but I think I heard him say women these days don't want to have children. And I was just thinking
it's both.
Myself, and I have literally never ever met anyone who wanted to have a child with me ever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I have some feelings about. I have some feelings about that. I have sort of I would have, if anybody ever wanted to have a child with me, I would have wanted to, but nobody ever did. And also I feel like naturally there are people who want to and people who don't, and that's naturally occurring, within just like there's, good and evil naturally occurring. There's lazy people and really productive people naturally occurring. But I do think it's really out of balance now that young people don't want to, for so many reasons. Part of that is because they just want their freedom and they want to play and whatever. And part of it really is economic, because it takes, it's hard to be it's hard to be a single mom. It's hard to raise kids when both parents have to work, so
right. So eliminating work would sort of help that problem if that was,
Yeah, I just felt like when he said that, I think he said specifically women, but I think it's like men.
Yeah.
Men also don't, because when I was dating, that was you do not bring that up about kids because men don't want that. And
wow.
I just literally never met a man that wanted to have a baby with me.
That's so weird.
That's so weird.
Every single first date I've been on, that's one of the first topics of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would have been so refreshing. You know, it would have been really if somebody wanted to, even, you know, in the first, say, 90 days, like say, okay, let's have this conversation, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it was
because
just,
like at the beginning of a relationship, you're establishing expectations for like what the relationship is going to be.
mhm.
And yeah, I think like the hookup culture isn't even looking at it as a relationship. It's like a situationship until you're just like, oh, I guess we're in a relationship.
Yeah, and that's how it was with me and Russ for a long time. It was really
Right.
like, well, it still is. I mean, literally nobody has ever wanted to marry me either, you know. So that's another
Right.
thing. And like, I feel fine with it now, you know, because I feel like I'm married, but yeah,
I
it's
feel
just
like
kind
you
of,
are too. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that I don't think we're gonna break up, you know. I think one of
Yeah.
us might die, but I think like after 16 years, I don't think anyone's gonna change so much.
In your dreams, though, that happens.
So obviously it's a fear. Yeah.
Right.
Obviously it is a fear on some level. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's going around a lot where people generalize women and generalize men, and there is a cure to it. So what happens naturally is we're getting these polarization in extremes, and then what people are doing is they're using the polarization and the extremes to categorize the entire group, where the entire, like, really there's a normal median, like there's a silent majority that isn't talking. So when he's categorizing all women as not wanting to have kids, what he's really saying is, okay, there's these extreme people over here, and I think they represent the whole group. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my assessment of it, at least. So whenever I hear someone say that, I'm just like, okay, they don't have the nuance yet. They don't know there's a difference between the loud minority and the silent majority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also about saying the thing about Musk and some of the stuff that he says. I think that also is a tactic. I mean, I see it as a tactic with Trump saying kind of hateful things and polarizing things. I don't think he really truly believes it. It's a tactic because polarization is working to his advantage. I mean, that's how politics works these days. You know, the fuel that it runs off of is polarization.
Right. I don't think Musk is purposely being polarizing. I think he's just a TI head, and TI can come off as radical at sometimes, because it's not doing with the FEs. It's not using the FE to to help people accept the TI, I guess. Like he could definitely frame everything he's doing in a different way, and it would be more acceptable.
Mm-hmm. I think honestly, he does seem unstable.
It's possible,
you know. And also, if you look at how he has changed, you know, from 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the comparisons I like to make is between him and the Facebook guy.
Yeah, Zuckerberg.
Yeah. So Zuckerberg hit a wall with the tribe and got so much tribe hate right from the beginning. And like what I see him doing now is sort of trying to come back from that. So like he's had a full hero's journey sort of thing. And Musk kind of had the opposite thing. No one really hated Musk. Everyone loved Musk from the very beginning. And so now he's hitting that wall where he's going to go down. And, and yeah, like Zuckerberg is ahead of the curve in that respect, I think.
Hey, could one of you look up Pol Pot?
Pol Pot?
The dictator.
Yeah, the dictator. Show us a good picture of his face.
The other thing I was thinking about with the children and like nobody ever wanting to marry me, like if I was just if I had a religion, you know, I'd probably be married and have kids. It's like if I went to church, if I ever went to church. You know what I mean? Because it's just like the culture.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
If I did
yeah.
younger,
Um, you know,
This guy,
he looks like Musk. He looks like a Chinese Elon Musk. He does. I can't unsee it.
I
I
don't
see
see it.
what you're saying. That in that one picture he does. Yeah.
It's like an Asian Elon Musk. So he was like so convicted on his belief that like farm labor will set them free. That the second he got into power, he just sent everybody to the farms.
Okay.
And he sent everybody to the farms because his belief was that it would bolster the economy, it would give people purpose, etc. And it ended up causing one of the massive, like the most deadliest, I believe, 4 years in any dictator's existence. And he became like super paranoid of tribe hate and all of that too, to where he
Mhm.
just started like exiling and executing his own cabinet. He let's see. He was so convicted in his ideals that whenever he brought them up to both China and Russia, other communist places, about them, they said, "Be careful with that, bro. I think you're going too far." And he didn't.
Right.
He didn't fucking listen. He just went off the deep end.
Yeah,
But
so you're sort of drawing a parallel between this and Musk, I guess, where these are kind of the dangers he can run into
yeah, these are
if
some of
left
the
unchecked. Yeah,
dangers.
right.
Also, Annie, um, I I can kind of get the about the whole like no kid thing, and I hope that doesn't happen to me because I would love to have kids. And you know, I've talked to my girlfriend about it, and she kind of gives me the "I hate kids" mantra because they're so annoying and they drive her crazy.
Yeah, other people's kids
And
drive you crazy. That's true.
and and my thing is, I'm like, don't hate the kid, hate the parent that's raising them to just completely f off, right? Like, and also, she's like
So wait,
afraid
we're
of.
supposed to hate your parents, Nico?
Yeah, I
Yes,
mean,
everybody should hate their parents.
I think even really good children are annoying sometimes, but it's like
Yeah.
it's a lot of things. It's like, yeah, they're annoying and they're great, and it's not about, you don't have kids because it's fun all the time. Like that's not why you do it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm like trying to get through to, you know. So I'm trying to get through to her. It's like, yo, look, um,
You know, you have kids not because you want the kids; it's because you want grandkids.
Hmm.
huh?
That's, I don't know.
Is
I
that
don't know.
is that your TI on that?
Yes, that's my Paul Pot TI.
Yeah.
Take it to the bank and force the world to follow it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I also felt like, I guess like you have them, it's ideal to have them in your 20s. That's like biologically better. But then like you're not really mature. And then when you are more mature, more stable, then you're kind of old.
Well, that's why
And
you're
maybe
used.
you already missed the boat, you know?
Like I said, grandkids.
That's that's why you what do you might call it? That's why, you know, historically a lot of people use the village to raise them. You know, so the kid could get a lot more perspectives, develop and grow a lot
Mhm.
better. I also just have gripes with the education. also have a lot of gripes with like the education system and all that too. It's not the best, but either way it goes, I took an edible and it's like kind of hitting.
Oh, all right. That's what's going on.
No, it's like kind of starting to hit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I would hang out with you, but I do have to go to bed. Yeah.
Apparently, you take the right kind of stuff with cannabis or THC, you can pull off a psychedelic experience. So that's what I'm gunning for. It's like
THC is a psychedelic. It is a psychedelic. Yeah.
a legal trip.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, good luck with that. I hope it gets you a job.
I'm just putting in application after application, you know.
Yeah.
Just
You have any final words, Annie?
Indeed.com has become my best friend.
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sleepy too, even though it's 2:30 here.
Nap time.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was a good stream, good panel.
Yeah.
Thanks for everyone for coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, so
Yeah.
next week, yeah, if
So
you,
like Tuesdays seem to be okay, right?
yeah, it is. I just won't be able to be here till like maybe I might be 30 minutes late. So I hope
That works. Yeah.
your
Someone else
signal-
has to come early because otherwise I'll just be on my own picking my nose, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. Well, have
See
a
you
good
guys
one.
later.
All right, guys. Have a good one.